Greetings to you and welcome back. We want to thank you so much for returning to our broadcast this evening, Closing the Gap broadcast, hosting our illustrious brother and student in the ministry, Student Minister Demetric Muhammad. You all are very well acquainted with him. And of course, you, like us, are looking forward to a wonderful, wonderful broadcast, continuing to celebrate the 126th birth anniversary of the exalted Christ, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. So in the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful, the one God to whom all praise is due, the Lord of the worlds, we thank Almighty God Allah for his merciful intervention in our affairs in the person of Master Fard Muhammad. We thank him for raising up from our midst his messenger, Messiah, the exalted Christ, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, through whom we have been given our beloved and blessed Redeemer, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. In their names, we're very happy once again to greet you, our viewing and listening audience, with the greeting words of peace. We say it in the Arabic language, Assalamu alaikum. And I'll turn the mic over to our dear sister, Stala Muhammad, our esteemed and illustrious co-host and managing editor of the Final Call newspaper. And I repeatedly declare the greatest paper that has ever been published by the greatest publisher, the Final Call newspaper. Sister Stala Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Brother James. Wonderful to be back on yet another edition of Closing the Gap on this very, very special day as we honor and celebrate the 126th birth anniversary of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And we can never thank Allah enough for raising him up among us. And we can never thank Allah and the most honorable Elijah Muhammad enough for leaving us in this hour with a comforter, a guide, and I speak of none other than the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I'm excited today. Happy Savior's Day. We want to welcome our viewing and listening audience, and as we await our guest, Student Minister Demetric Muhammad, who we know is going to have a wealth of information to share with us this evening. We want to also encourage those who are tuning in to make sure during our broadcast this evening, if you have any questions that you would like to pose to Student Minister Demetric Muhammad, that you place those questions in the chat. And our topic this evening, the keys to wealth and power, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad's gift to Black America. And with that, I would now go ahead and pass the mic to Brother Chad Muhammad for his opening remarks. Brother Chad.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, Sister Sister. How about I was about to mention our in the back person. I was about to bring you forward, Sister Sheila.
Sheila, all right. One of these days.
One of these days. That's right.
We get the pleasure of looking behind the scenes sometimes. So I'm thinking about that baby, Sister Sheila. Thank you, Sister Stala. And greetings, assalamu alaikum to all our guests. We thank you for your patience. We should still be on that wonderful high after listening from our national headquarters, those great testimonies of our national laborers and just the testimony of those that spoke it today. So we want to continue that same spirit. Just glad to be here and glad to get ready to hear from our dear brother who has a wealth of knowledge, specializing in subjects like this, and gave a great article recently in the Final Call newspaper. So we're looking forward to it, family. Praise be to Allah. Alhamdulillah. All righty.
All praise is due to Allah. And as we await the arrival of our dear brother and esteemed guest, just a few words from that wonderful article. And if you've got your latest copy of the Final Call newspaper, and I'm sure you do, in the Final Call newspaper is featured our dear brother's article, as Sister Stala mentioned, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and his message to the black man, equal keys to group wealth and power. And you know, Sister Starla, Brother Student Minister Minister Chad, boy, it's not our day today.
It's the formal day, brother.
We're just excited. We just excited. But Sister Starla, Student Minister Chad, this brings me back to, of course, the lessons that declares Master Fard Muhammad's first promise he made to us upon finding us here in the wilderness of North America, which was, of course, luxury, money, good homes, and friendships in all walks of life. And so let's continue. I see our dear brother and esteemed guest has arrived as we continue with the celebration of the 126th birth anniversary of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And he's here looking crisp and clean, ready to go. Welcome once again, Brother Student Minister Demetric Muhammad. So very happy to see you as always. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, dear brother.
Just that was short. All right, well, let's get into it. I anticipated him having a few opening remarks, but let's get right into it.
We always have opening remarks. I didn't know that was the cue for opening remarks, but my opening remarks are always just my expressions of gratitude and appreciation, first and foremost to Almighty God Allah, who appeared to us in the divine person of Master Fard Muhammad. We thank him for his coming, and we thank him for his wise choice of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad to be a divine leader, teacher, and guide for the Black man and woman of America, his messenger Messiah, and the exalted Christ. And we thank these two for the man that has been our leader, teacher, and guide directly for the past 40 plus years. He whom the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad made to take his place among the people, Allah's anointed servant and Messiah among us, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I am eternally grateful for these three who have laid the foundation for the work of the resurrection of our people and who are leading that work. And we are very honored to play whatever small role that we can as a student and a helper. And tonight we're very excited to be back on Closing the Gap as we honor and celebrate the continued life and impact of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
All praises due to Allah. You know, Brother Minister, I believe, in fact, I'm sure that this interview will be nothing less than complimentary to what we have just witnessed and experienced in the testimonies of some members of the council, Brother Ahmed, Brother Saad, Brother Raouf, giving their testimonies as to their experience with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in this great rebuilding effort. So this is going to be very, very complimentary, I believe, and I'd like to get right into it. As you can see, if you can see the comments, the viewing and listening audience filling up and waiting to hear what you wish to share with us on the equal keys to group wealth and power. Message to the Black man from the Honorable, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. An article I'll just mention again that is featured in the latest edition of the Final Call newspaper. So let's get into it. Let me ask you, what made you write this particular aspect of the benefits of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
Thank you so much. And I'm very grateful to Sister Starla, who is the managing editor of the world's greatest newspaper, for graciously inviting us to offer something of contribution to the paper's overall theme of celebration and tribute to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I was very inspired, as we had been, as we always are, studying and encountering various research and information that serves to help us to vindicate the noble work and person of both the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so as we were doing some research, we encountered a book that was published by two Yale Law School professors several years ago, where they were researching and investigating the root causes of group success and the group attainment of wealth. And they were looking at various immigrant groups, various ethnic groups, even various religious groups, to unearth and to be able to publish before the world, what is this secret ingredient? What are the real reasons that create the attainment of wealth and power in America for some groups and for not others? And so they published a book entitled The Triple Package. And as they were doing their research, they identified three cultural characteristics, three principles, three characteristic traits of groups in America that attain wealth and power and success. And as we were reviewing their findings, we were, as the old saying goes, our antenna went up. And it became clear to me that what these esteemed Ivy League professors, a husband and wife team, intriguingly both members of groups that have done exceedingly well in the attainment of wealth and power in America, a Jewish husband and an Asian wife, in both of those groups, and their success is discussed in the book. But it became clear to me that what these successful groups were using to become successful in America were simultaneously component parts of the message that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan have worked to give to our people. And Allah says in the Quran that you shall know the believers, for they are the successful ones. Also in the Quran, it refers to the believing men and women having their share of this world's life and the hereafter. So Islam, characteristically as a religion, is not a religion that causes the believer to put off success in this life only to achieve it in the afterlife after we have physically died. We know that was a part of the old slave master's religious teaching to our foreparents. He tried to calm our foreparents whose blood, sweat, and tears, whose labor and ingenuity and brilliance was being used to create a heaven on earth for the white ruling class of America. Those same white rulers of America, then as plantation owners and slave masters and slave overseers, slave tormentors, they would say to our foreparents that they should not be worried about getting their reward in this life. They should wait until they were dead and they would receive it in heaven. In that old proverbial sweet pie in the sky after you die. And the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, his preaching means the death knell to that old slavery preaching and teaching, for he has taught us that both heaven and hell are two conditions of life, and that we should clean up our lives, submit and obey Allah, and follow him, that we might achieve success in this life as well as the hereafter, which in truth only means, as he has taught to us, here on this earth after Satan and his evil civilization has been removed. And so we were inspired to write about this phenomenon, particularly because for so long there have been observers and onlookers of the Nation of Islam who have not been laudatory or complimentary of the message of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. In fact, the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad in previous periods of time have been mocked and ridiculed and condemned. And so if you have read the article, which I pray that those in the viewing audience have read, we introduced the article with a passage of scripture from the Bible. It's a peculiar passage because the English translators use the term the foolishness of God. Now, certainly that is a phrasing that would, under normal circumstances, be rather offensive to believers in God. However, within the context of that writing, we see that it is nonetheless a response to the false characterization of the wisdom of God by the opponents and the enemies of God and the believers. But God says through the writers of that scripture that he would bring to naught the wisdom of the wise of this world through that which those wise persons had considered to be foolishness. Right. This passage is in harmony, most certainly, to one of the sayings of Jesus when he said that he was thankful to God that he had kept away certain profound truths from the wise and the prudent man and woman, and had instead chosen to give it unto a people who were called babes. So we thank Allah for the wisdom of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad as we are learning it through his anointed servant, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And we argue that as a people, not just the membership of the Nation of Islam, but as a people in 2023, as we're going into 2024, we believe that the conditions of Black life in America warrant a reappraisal of the message of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad by all of our people, because what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and what Minister Farrakhan have warned our people of, we see it coming to pass. And the little Nation of Islam, the registered membership of the Nation of Islam, is like a little small example of what the big Nation of Islam, which is the masses of our people, can achieve if we would hearken unto the voice of that man called Elijah that is coming to us today crystal clear through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Wonderful response, Brother Minister. You know, I'd like to pass the mic over to my dear sister and co-host, Sister Starla Muhammad. But just before I do, I just want to make the statement. It gives a new meaning to poor righteous teachers. So thank you for your response. Sister Starla.
All praise is due to Allah.
Yes, sir. We have a question, Brother Demetric, from our dear brother Tony Muhammad down in Miami. So I will place his question on the screen. And Brother Tony states, Assalamu alaikum, Brother Minister. Many of us have invested our finances in many economic building trends. However, if you can please expound on the importance of making the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad our base when it comes to integrity and the reason why our righteousness will sustain us.
That's a big question. Let me read it here on the screen. It says, the importance of making the teachings our base when it comes to integrity and the reason why our righteousness will sustain us. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has taught to us, as well as been an example of a man with sterling integrity. Both he and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad are like the Muhammad of the Holy Quran, when it was Allah in the 68th surah entitled The Pen that defends Muhammad against the slander of his opponents by stating that Muhammad has sublime morals. So if we want to follow the example of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, then we are following two men whose integrity is without question. We're following two men who have sublime morals. So as students, we should want to use their example and make it not just the base of our work, because it's one thing to lay a good foundation, but sometimes if the foundation is good, the other parts of the house can be pretty bad if you're not careful. So we want to use his teachings as the base, as the walls, as the roof, as the interior design, and as the exterior and the landscaping. In every aspect of our life, we will find that there is wisdom from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan to guide us. And the other part of the question about integrity and the base of our work, we are Muslims. And if we are to get into business, thank you for putting it back on the screen. If we are to get into business, we have to remember that we are first Muslims.
That's right.
And then secondarily, we are business men and women.
Come on, bro.
And if you look at the history of Islam and its global expansion, sometimes the Orientalist writers who were very afraid of Islam's expansion into Europe, so they used their scholarship to slander the Prophet and to slander the Muslims. And they are in truth the genesis of the mythology that Islam was spread by the sword. Mm-hmm. In truth, when you look at the expansion, particularly of Islam into Africa after Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, you find that the first Muslims that many of the Africans encountered were Muslim merchants. And it was because of the integrity and the righteousness of Muslim merchants that a teachable moment was created. And since our African brothers, foreparents, if you will, were not always given a good experience meeting traders, they were very intrigued at the Muslims who were fair and honest business persons. And this was the genesis of the spread of Islam in Africa after the Prophet. So as Muslims, our integrity and our righteousness is not something that we segment and section off from our business and investing work, but it is integral to it, because not only do we seek to make a profit, but we also have somewhere within our consciousness that maybe we will also make a convert.
Praise be to Allah. We thank you for that answer, Student Minister Demetric. Praise be to Allah. Brother Tony most definitely appreciated it. He said, good teaching, good teaching.
All praises due to Allah.
I'm going to follow something in that same vein, but taking it somewhere. So, a message to the black man in a chapter that's called Economic Blueprint. Mm-hmm. Remember, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us to pull your resources physically as well as financially. And he gives the example like if there are 6 or 8 Muslim with knowledge and experience, and he give the example of using like a grocery store then to go ahead and start that business. So I could see how with Brother Tony questions, you know, that you know, you need that integrity to still be there. But and he goes on, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad in Message to the Black Man, he goes on to say, work collectively and harmoniously, and Allah will bless you with success. I wanted, if you could, to speak on, expound on some of the practical applications of historical accounts of this ever taking place up under the direction that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad had given us of pulling our resources and working together.
That's a great question. And I might even have some slides that address that.
Okay. Praise be to Allah.
But
yes,
it
sir.
kind of goes without, well, I'm not going to say it goes without saying, but one of the great aspects, even in the public sector, the secular world, of those who have looked upon the nation, is when they looked upon the Nation of Islam's economic success and prowess. And so let me see if we have some of that information here. So some of us may be familiar with this booklet. There's one done in 1973 and this one from 1975, where it details some of the economic success of the Nation of Islam. As you raised the question, Brother Student Minister Chad, regarding the encouragement of those of us of like mind to pool our resources. First, before we have a duty and a responsibility to pooling our resources necessarily on a local level, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan have shown us the need to build nationally. And so even though we sometimes just look at it as a charitable commitment, as we give in our charities to help to build and to support our national headquarters, it can be viewed as an aspect of the pooling of our resources to build an independent nation. Sometimes when we think of 8 to 10 of us pooling our resources, we think of it, well, 8 to 10 of us will pool our resources to open up a store or to open up a restaurant. That's one manifestation of this great universal principle. But the Nation of Islam as a whole is a grand manifestation of the pooling of the nickels, the pennies, the dimes, and the dollars of the believing men and women. As there's something in the Quran about how matters of state take precedence. So the history of the buying of farmland and the establishing of fleets of trucks, having more than 100 temples in cities throughout America and the Caribbean, the establishment of an independent educational system known as the Muhammad University of Islam. These are great examples of the pooling of our resources. I believe we have attached here from the Muhammad Speaks, which includes some of the verbiage provided in the Savior's Day announcements given by, at that time, the National Secretary, Brother Abbas Rasul, and he talked about how the nation had amassed some $50 million at that time in incomes. And so the Muhammad Speaks newspaper thereafter listed some of those businesses and investments and economic growth indicators that the National Secretary had called off. So if you can read it here, you see Muhammad's temples of Islam in more than 150 cities in North America, Bermuda, Jamaica, and Belize. Muhammad Universities of Islam in 46 cities. Muhammad Speaks newspaper and printing press and a multi-million-dollar complex printing the International News Weekly with a circulation of more than 853,000 copies, cold and dry storage and warehouse facilities, Good Foods Incorporation, meat, produce, and eggs, Chicago Lamb Packers, a cross-country trucking system. And I'm not going to read them all, but I just want to make sure that we understand that there's a large national manifestation of the pooling of our resources. And then there may be those of us in our respective mosques or study groups or in our communities that go and we pool our resources. I was very inspired, and it reminded me of the work of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan. I believe it was last year, or maybe it was during the pandemic, but I read a story about 19 Black families that had pooled their resources to buy a town somewhere in the South. I don't remember where it was. And it made me to know that as America begins to crumble and she begins to fall, there are those, maybe not in the public, but are privately studying the message of those Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and they are concluding that that message was all along the right path for Black America to go. And as you may have read our article, we concluded our article with an exhortation to Black leadership in America to sit and meet with Minister Farrakhan, and let's come up with a plan to implement the program and position of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to save our people and to build a future for our people.
Oh, praise is due to Allah.
Wow. Thank you, sir. Praise be to Allah.
Yes, thank you. Excellent. Go ahead, Sister Starla.
All right, we've got another question here from Lukman Muhammad that I'll place on the screen, Brother Demetric. He states, Assalamu alaikum. Being in Philadelphia, probably one of the most Islamic populated cities in America, if not the most, there is a heavy disregard for the history of Islam and how it got started in America. May you go into depth of the significant role the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad played in not only Islam in America, but Black consciousness as well. How do we spread that sort of message in a small pitch to our people?
Well, I'll take the latter question first. One of the best ways to spread that message succinctly is to share literature with our people. We can share The Final Call, which each and every week, thanks to Sister Starla and those that put the paper out, there is something in the paper that shows the believing men and women in what they're doing around the country. And you also have the books of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I would recommend, especially as brothers who are out in the field, if you will, engaging with our people, we need to be able to have copies of Message to the Black Man. Some maybe we give to our people for free if they don't have the resources to purchase it, because on the back cover of the Muhammad Speaks, you have some very powerful, Message to the Black Man. On the back cover of Message to the Black Man, you have some very powerful quotes that most of our people are just simply not familiar with. We're talking about the impact of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad in cities like Philadelphia and on Black consciousness. Most of our people do not know who the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is because of the evil work of our enemy to hide the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and to slander him whenever he is mentioned in books or periodicals. This is the reason why the ministry of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has been so important in the rebuilding of the nation. If you notice, even though tonight we are talking about how the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave to our people the keys to wealth and power, if you study the beautiful methodology of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, you notice that the minister in the rebuilding, he doesn't place emphasis on economics initially. He places an emphasis on the restoration of the reputation of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and his teachings among the people who had been victimized by our enemies, by the enemy making them to not even know who the most honorable Elijah Muhammad is. And those who knew of him, they told them very ugly things about the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. So we should make sure that whether or not we have copies of Message to the Black Man, we can show them that this is a man that was called the most powerful black man in America. This is a man that has been lauded and celebrated by powerful and wise people. This is a man that has students and followers and believers all over America and the world, and they themselves are examples of the power and the beneficial impact of his work. I believe we have in some of the slides that this particular research article where this scholar goes into describing how the Nation of Islam has created a culture of achievement. And they studied some of our high school students, specifically some young female high school students who were members of the Nation of Islam. It describes how, as followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan, these young students were achieving more than their peers because of what they were learning in the nation. In places like Philadelphia, where there is a large Islamic presence, it is something of an admixture of different Islamic peoples and philosophies. But at the root of Islam in Philadelphia is the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and his students, be it Minister Malcolm, his son for a short period of time, who was at that time Minister Wallace D. Muhammad. And you have the legacy of the great Minister Jeremiah Shabazz. Yeah. So you have at the root of Islam in Philadelphia, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and his students. So we just have to make sure that we find and create teachable moments to share the great history of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad in our respective cities. And we'll find that we're introducing most of the time the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and his teachings to a generation who the enemy has kept him hidden from.
Praise be to Allah. Brother Student Minister Demetric, you know, I know we hear this a lot and we talk about it, you know, especially dealing with the subject matter, it comes to mind. You know, when dealing with the supreme wisdom, we talk about the ideal of that Allah given us, as you talked about earlier, you know, the promise of luxury, good homes, friendships, and all walks of life. What is the difference, if you can go into, like, you know, between luxury and all those other additions, you know, because sometimes, you know, we think of luxury, think about it's just money. Could you go into that? And also, could you go into how you see that coming about? Like, how do one secure some benefits while they're living through Islam?
Well, we are taught when we're looking at the meanings of words to use the dictionary. So let me give you the dictionary definition first of the word luxury, so that we both have something of an understanding of what the word means in English.
Yes, sir.
So according to Mr. Collins in his dictionary, he says luxury in American English means it is a noun, a material object, service, etc., conducive to sumptuous living, usually a delicacy, elegance, or refinement of living rather than a necessity. Another meaning is free or habitual indulgence in or enjoyment of comforts and pleasures in addition to those necessary for a reasonable standard of well-being. It also means a means of ministering to such indulgence or enjoyment, a pleasure out of the ordinary allowed to oneself. And it also means something pleasant and satisfying. So we were promised luxury. And there's something in our lessons that is in problem number 13 that makes a reference to the usage of a mathematical theology to secure luxury, money, good homes, and friendship in all walk of life.
That's right.
So this is a part of the promise that Allah, who appeared to us in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, made to us. And if you, first of all, let's acknowledge the reality of the living conditions of the Nation of Islam and its membership, which by and large is much better than the masses of our people. And this is because when we come into Islam, if we submit to what we are taught, we almost instantaneously improve a betterment in our living conditions.
That's right.
If you follow the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad as they're given to us by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, then we no longer are indulging in vices that this world promotes. We give up the consumption of alcohol. We give up using illegal narcotics. We even, if we are obedient, then we're no longer eating 3 meals a day with snacks in between.
Yes, sir.
We're no longer trying to have a wife and 3 or 4 women on the side, or a husband and 3 or 4 men on the side.
Right.
Because in 2023, both happen in the secular world.
Yes, sir.
So we begin to see that luxury is attainable because whatever resources we may be blessed with, we find a much more efficient usage of those resources when we remove those elements from our life that don't belong in the life of a righteous person. Then, as we are cleaning up our lives, you know, a righteous lifestyle has an effect on the thinking of a man or woman.
Come on, brother.
When we begin to give up sin and evil as a way of life, we find our creative mind being turned on in a way that it has not been turned on previously. And so most of the believers are very creative people. And it is through, as I heard the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan say, it is through the proper development and utilization of our creative mind that we are able to create. We're able to lay down at night, perhaps, and envision a goal, envision an achievement, envision the attainment even of luxury. And then through the utilization of principles of mathematics, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, exponents, fractions, and the resolving of fractions. See, we learn in Islam that Islam is mathematics and mathematics is Islam and can be proven in no limit of time. So the Muslim has a view of life and a view of circumstances that enables us, if we are diligent, to secure benefit for ourselves in this life. As we mentioned earlier, we really have the tools, and we've been given the tools, not just for wealth and power, but we've been given the tools to create a heaven on earth. And so Master Fard Muhammad, he wanted to see the black man and woman of America in luxury. He wanted to see us in the highest manifestation of civilization. So everything that is in his teachings to the most honorable Elijah Muhammad that we've received through Minister Farrakhan, if you look at it, you will see that it is purpose to beautify us. Its purpose to enlighten us. Its purpose to, again, cause us to have a creative mind. But ultimately, it is purpose to raise us from the bottom of American society to the leadership position of the kingdom of God. And so sometimes we may not be as diligent as we should be, Brother Student Minister Chad, in applying those mathematical principles. But that's not the fault of the mathematical principles. That's just maybe our slowness or our unwillingness to use those principles to secure benefit for ourselves and our family.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you. Wonderful response.
All praise is due to Allah.
In that same line, Brother Minister, as we read your article, have read your article, and continue to do so, I'd like to bring or point our attention to an aspect that you mentioned in the article dealing with group economics as it relates to the culture of different peoples, how other peoples can maximize their cultural sameness for the benefit of economic growth. And that seems to be something missing or lacking in the Black community. Can you speak to that, Brother Minister, please?
Yes, sir. I want to pull up, first of all, something from this book that I think is important. Not that I'm trying to get people to purchase the book or sell the book, but it's just one of many resources and many documented pieces of research that have emerged in the wake of the magnificent ministry of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who, when he stood to rebuild the nation, he stood defending the integrity of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and what he taught.
Yeah.
And so I'm always very excited to encounter research that is a part of what I have seen as a great conspiracy, where God is at the root of it, where time and circumstances are coming together to vindicate every aspect of what Allah revealed to the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so in this research, they list these different cultural traits. And when I began to look at it, I said, well, this is what the most honorable Elijah Muhammad was giving to us, but he encountered such difficulty giving it to us because as he tried to teach us and to raise us, he faced the most vehement opposition, the most powerful government in America. So the authors begin by talking about how it is one of humanity's enduring mysteries why some individuals rise from unpromising origins to great heights when so many others, facing similar obstacles and with seemingly similar capabilities, don't rise at all. This book is about that age-old question. We wrote it hoping that readers might come away with a better understanding of the world we live in, a world in which certain individuals and groups do strikingly better than others in terms of wealth, position, and conventional measures of success. So they begin, as you see in the article, talking about how each of these groups that do well, the authors called it, they have a superiority complex. And this is how they define that. They say this element of the triple package is easiest to define: a deeply internalized belief in your group's specialness, exceptionality, or superiority. This belief can derive from widely varying sources. It can be religious, as in the case of Mormons. It can be rooted in a story about the magnificence of your people's history and civilization, as in the case of Chinese or Persians. It can be based on identity-defining social distinctions that most Americans have never even heard of. Americans, or belonging to, heard of, such as descending from the priestly Brahmin caste in the case of some Indian Americans, or belonging to the famously entrepreneurial Igbo people in the case of many Nigerian immigrants. So they, first of all, identified that people who are successful, groups who are successful, they believe that they have something special about them. They don't suffer from collective group low self-esteem, but they have some teaching. They have some private belief. They have something in the literature and the traditions of their people that cause them to feel that, hey, we were born to be successful.
That's right.
You know what? Failure is not in our DNA. And so they nurture this belief in their children, and they use this to drive them to success and achievement. And so we looked at how that squared with what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave to us. He wrote Message to the Black Man in America. And if you look at how that book is laid out, the program and position is in the latter half of the book. But the first half of the book deals with the theology of God and the theology of self. And so in one particular place, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, he says, the original man Allah has declared is none other than the black man, the first and last, maker and owner of the universe. From him came all brown, yellow, red, and white. Now it is so easy to recognize the original man, the real owner of the earth, by the history of the two, parentheses, black and white. We have an unending past history of the black nation and a limited one of the white race. We find that history teaches that the earth was populated by the black nation ever since it was created. But the history of the white race doesn't take us beyond 6,000 years. And that was first published in one of his articles in a Pittsburgh Courier newspaper. Now, keep in mind what these scholars and scientists are identifying among immigrant groups as a key to success. Yet, as the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan gave this kind of message that is not something that they came up with, is what Allah revealed to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So this is a part of the divinely revealed messages of God to his messenger. But it has the effect of uplifting the downtrodden, the despised, and the rejected black people of America. And for these two, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan, offering this to black people in America, they've been labeled black supremacists.
That's right. Go ahead, bro.
Fact about it, if you go to the Southern Poverty Law Center, when they condemn us as a hate group and you begin to sift through, why do they call the nation a hate group? We don't have any record of committing hate crimes.
That's right.
They point to our religious teachings. They say that this, again, the kind of messaging given to a people that propelled them to the attainment of wealth and power in America, as the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan have endeavored to give that to us. They have had to fight through propaganda. They've had to fight through being slandered by being called black supremacists. So right there in the message of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad that he gave freely to us, now scientists and scholars are saying, you know, what these are key ingredients and elements that make a people successful. And so I think that's an important observation that vindicates the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because long before these traits had been identified, he was on his post. He was on his assignment.
That's right.
Resurrecting our people.
That's right.
Praise be to Allah.
All praise is due to Allah. Thank you for that. It's critical to note that that which other cultural and ethnic groups and racial groups, if you will, manifest in their ability to be successful, when black people do the same thing, for some reason, we come under criticism. and are mislabeled, as you said, Black supremacists. Hence this critical race theory concept that they try to beat us over the head with. But that's absolutely the truth, Brother Minister. And we like very much that you brought it out in your article. And again, those of you who don't have your latest final call, make sure you get it. Or among other things, of course, the article is there. And of course, the other writings of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But that ability that you point out in the article to extract from us that which is unique in us as a people, and then utilize that to do what other people are doing. That is to be successful economically, socially, politically, and otherwise. Yet again, we are mislabeled. And that's why what you do, Brother Minister, is so very important and appreciated. So let us continue. I just want to give you your props.
All praise belongs to Allah.
Do we have any? Go ahead, Sister Starla.
Brother James, you actually kind of took a question I was going to ask as well with regard to. I find it just interesting this opposition that comes up, because even when we look at the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I believe, and Brother James, correct me if I'm wrong, when the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad wanted to purchase, it's now called the South Shore Cultural Center in Chicago. I think it was originally the South Shore Country Club, and there was opposition. Of course, we look at when the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan introduced, the Power Program. Again, you get opposition, from members of the Jewish community, and even looking at those who may not be registered Muslims in the Nation of Islam. There was a recent story about two Black women, sisters, I believe, in the Atlanta area, and they have what they call the Fearless Fund, because we know in terms of access to capital for Black businesses, it's difficult. So they actually started a fund to lend, or to a venture capitalist fund to give, funds to particularly, they use the term, of course, people of color, but particularly women, to give them money. But then there was a recent suit filed against them, screaming that that's reverse racism. So I just find the opposition whenever it comes to us is just just shows the enemy never sleeps. So we just have to keep on pushing. But Brother Demetric, we do have another question. I think actually you kind of answered part of it, or if not most of it, but I'll place it up here anyway. This is by Eugene Larry, who states, Assalamu alaikum, dear brother minister. Can you speak a little in depth with regards to your statement concerning a Jewish man and his Asian wife, how they are using the teachings? But of course, this is the book that you've been sharing with us this evening. And of course, that is the basis of your current article in the final call.
Yes, this is the book written by Professor Amy Chua and her husband, Jed Rubenfeld. And they were not so much using the teachings, but like many people who nowadays are involved in various research projects, they're motivated to do research projects seeking to provide an answer to a question or a solution to a problem. And what I have noticed, and some of us on the research team have noticed, is that many times these research projects produce conclusions, and the conclusions that are produced many times after years of research, after millions of dollars have been expended to do the research, their conclusions or their findings end up harmonizing and agreeing with what Allah revealed to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so we were drawn to this research because they listed these three characteristic traits that they have identified as being a part of all of these very successful groups: the Mormons, the Jews, Nigerians, Cuban Americans, East Asian immigrants.
Yes.
These communities that sometimes are pejoratively dubbed as the so-called model immigrant. But the good thing about what the professors have identified, and they argue in the book, is that these cultural characteristics, these principles, can be applied and utilized by all types of people, groups as well as individuals, to produce success in life. And so that is what we have been reading and looking into. Let me turn off the mueddin here. Pardon me.
Praise be to him. All right. Praise be to Allah.
Thank you.
That's okay, Brother Minister. You're calling us to the actual practice of what prayer is calling us to. So, that's that.
Alhamdulillah. Praise be to Allah. Brother, Student Minister Demetric, in your article, you know, the title, The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and His Message to the Black Man Equal Keys to Group Wealth and Power. Could you talk about the power part? And I know earlier we made the reference, you know, to the back of the Message to the Black Man, how Reader's Digest called him the most powerful black man in America. When you equate in his message that it equals keys to growth, wealth, and power, in the power part, can you elaborate a little bit more on that? And I think about the testimonies that was given on Message to the Black Man, the back of that also, because even the New York Times talk about how he's able, along all of the Negro leaders, they say Elijah Muhammad has a vivid awareness of the vital needs of a new birth in any drastic human transformation.
Yes.
All right. So does that tie into this power of that's help, you know, the transformative life that helps to also give power from this message and so forth? If you can elaborate on that.
Yes, certainly in American society, wealth and power frequently go together.
Right.
Even in the streets, you hear the young brothers say, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. You know, Wu-Tang came out with a song in the 90s, Cream, cash rules everything around me.
That's right.
So in America, wealth and power aren't really separated unless you look at Black America, where collectively we have billions, maybe trillions. Statisticians have argued that passes through our hands. Yet we have no mechanism to capture and harness the wealth that we have access to.
That's right.
So we continue to be powerless. And you see it very much so in the case of electoral politics, Brother Student Minister Chad.
That's right.
I wrote an essay a couple of years ago that's on our website called researchminister.com, but the essay was called The No-Show Paradox. And the no-show paradox is a phenomenon in sociology that describes immigrant communities who on voting day, most of the time, they are a no-show. Right. Yet, if you compare what they are able to benefit from the American economy, it's a paradoxical situation because they seem to benefit if the Democrats are in power. They seem to benefit if the Republicans are in power. They seem to benefit if there is an equal number of Democrats and Republicans in the Congress. And so the sociologists are baffled because these communities become powerful even though they don't really get too heavily involved in the process of electoral politics. Yet, when our elected officials get ready to run for office, they don't stop by Second Baptist Church or Saint this AME or the Kojic Church. They don't come to the black churches unless they want to make sure they have our vote.
That's right.
But they go into immigrant communities asking the immigrant communities, what is your agenda?
That's right.
If we get into office, what do we need to do? What do we need to promise you that we will do in exchange for the vote of the few of you who do vote? Because most of them don't vote, but they have power. We don't see the high incidence of police brutality, say in Chinatown. We don't see that except in the hood, because black communities are not viewed as powerful. We know from the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan, we are potentially powerful. But even though a lot of dollars go through our hand, wealth, which is described as riches that are transferable from one generation to the next. We have a lot of rich people, but we don't have a lot of wealthy people. But even though we do have access to a significant amount of money in America, we are by and large without power, because the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad has taught to us that unity is the key to the attainment of power. Again, I go back to my polite but exclamatory exhortation in my article. And I really truly believe that conditions on the ground, you know, in war, they have this phrase, what is the situation on the ground? Because sometimes the commanders and the generals, they are somewhere in a safe location. And so they get reports to tell them, what is the situation on the ground? What's actually happening? Well, if we look at Black America as being in a war zone, which we are,
That's right.
the situation on the ground is not very good. And so in my article, I close it by encouraging the leaders of our people. Okay, we tried integration. We're now almost 60 years
That's right.
after the passing of the Civil Rights Bill in the 60s. And the problems that we had in the 60s, we have them plus the additional problem of a loss of economic strength when Black people under integration started spending their dollars with white businesses, and many Black businesses had to close. So suffice it to say, the problems that we had under segregation, we still have them, plus more problems under integration. So we cannot act any longer as though a solution has not been offered to us.
Come on, brother.
The solution has been offered to us, but in the masses, we have not accepted that solution. So I encourage those in the leadership of the great Black organizations, those in the leadership in the fields of education and business and economic, sit down with Minister Farrakhan.
That's right.
And let's come together on how we can implement the program and the position of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. You don't have to say, well, I can't sit down with Farrakhan because I ain't no Muslim and I ain't trying to give up Jesus. You see, I like the Muslims, but I can't give up Jesus.
That's right.
Brother and sister, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan have never made it a requirement that anybody who wants to work with the nation give up their belief in Jesus.
That's right.
The minister has never made it a precondition that you got to leave the church. The minister, in the tradition of the prophet, peace be upon him, he only encourages you that if you are a Christian, then be the best Christian you can be. Be a real follower of Jesus. Don't just offer lip service to what you say you believe in, but really be that, because if you are really that and you are striving to be that, you will find brotherhood and support from those of us in the Nation of Islam. And we now need to be like intelligent people in a war zone.
That's right.
When you're in a war zone and on a battlefield, you don't care too much about the religion of the man that's in the foxhole with you.
That's right.
All you want to know is, does he have your back?
That's right.
You can argue religion once the war is over and the victory is secure. So we need to get together, and we need to implement in every aspect of Black life in America the program and position of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad as taught by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
All praise is due to Allah. Brother Minister, if you don't mind, there are two announcements I need to make as we go forward. One of which is, those of you who have tuned in at 7:30, you know that we started a little late. So if we could prevail upon our esteemed guests to stay with us a little longer than the normal 9 o'clock closeout, we would be very grateful, Brother Minister. And I want to thank all of you who came back to the broadcast to participate with us in this wonderful discussion. The second announcement I want to make is really one of gratitude. Those of you who've been watching us, you know that we have been making an extra appeal to you to help us financially, because we were trying to meet a goal, and that is to secure the domain of our broadcast network. I'm just very pleased to announce that with your help, we achieved that. And I want to publicly thank all of those of you who have donated, of course, your time, but also your monies to keep this, what we believe is relevant and important broadcast network going. So thank you, thank you, thank you. It's 8:59 now. Normally we would close, but if you don't mind, Sister Starla, Brother Student Minister Chad, and of course, our esteemed guest, can you stay with us maybe another half hour or so?
Yes, sir.
I kind of put that kind of hard to refuse kind of way. Demetric taught me that. Let's continue, please, Sister Starla.
Yes, sir. Brother Demetric, I'm curious to ask you, this couple that wrote the book, have you read any of their other writings? Is this kind of in their wheelhouse in terms of them examining these various, whether you want to call them ethnic enclaves, economics, etc.? Are you familiar with any of their other work and writings?
I've really learned of them, and it appears that, like most people who have a specific focus or discipline, they also have outside interests. But this appears to be a part of their research interests, as they have published about ethnic success. And the Professor Amy Chua, sometimes prior to this work, she wrote about the phenomenon of Asian mothers and their children and their push to make them successful. And her husband is similar. Of course, they are law school professors at Yale. And so they have that as their core expertise, and they've utilized that to make observations as to who ultimately matriculates to become a student in their class. As I was listening to one of their TED Talks a few days ago, they were discussing how they arrived at this particular research interest, and it had to do with looking at the demographic profile of the student body in Yale Law School. And then that intrigued them because they began to see certain ethnic groups become more numerous in their classrooms.
Praise be to Allah. Student Minister Demetric, I know, you know, and to our listening audience, when we think about it, we are probably like, a week and a couple of days away from the 28th anniversary, is it, of the Million Man March, right? And when we're talking about, as your article dealt with, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and his message to the black man, how it equal keys to group wealth and power. Could we say the same thing about his #1 star student, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan? You know, as we approach this 28th anniversary, you know, the powerful impact of that. And then how we talked about in your article, you know, how they would give negative connotation to something that is done just so wonderful. Could we tie that in, as, you know, when we look at the outcome of the Million Man March, Holy Day of Atonement, and everything that came out of it, which was so beautiful, and still to this day, that as we go through year by year, just celebrating that. Could you expound on, like in the same case as with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, that this his message also equal keys to group wealth and power also?
Most certainly, because the minister has not authored a new message.
Mm-hmm.
We used to refer to him as the divine reminder.
Right. Come on.
So the core of the minister's message is the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Minister Farrakhan represents mercy. He gives to us as a people another chance, another opportunity to accept the guidance that first came through the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And now it comes through the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad via the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So most certainly. And again, as believers, you know, we have to give credit what credit is due. Now, sometimes, as you ask the question about luxury, so we might feel, well, I want luxury. I want to make the kind of money of an NBA or NFL player. You know, that's the luxury concept I have in my mind. And perhaps Allah will bless us with that type of material success. But if we would give credit what credit is due and be grateful, we have to look at our life after Islam in comparison to our life before Islam. And I don't know any of the believers who are doing worse after they accepted Islam than they were before they accepted Islam.
No, sir.
I don't know no believer that's doing worse.
That's right, brother.
That's crazy.
That's right.
Health-wise, family-wise, money-wise, respect-wise.
That's right.
I mean, in every indicator where we could measure success, where we could measure well-being, we have to give credit where credit is due. We have benefited from submitting to the degree that we have submitted. And most of us, if we would be candid about it, we would have to say we still need to submit 100%. But to the degree that we have submitted, we have been benefited. We have more money in our pocket. We have more respect from both our people and from the enemy. We have better health.
That's right.
We have a mind that comes up with ideas to generate wealth. So we can't become disappointed that we are not sitting on top of a $1 billion bank account.
Come on.
When some of the people over $1 billion bank account, I mean, go and talk to Mr. Trump these days to see how the billionaires are doing. Billionaires, in many cases, they may have a $1 billion bank account, but like him, they may be in a world of legal trouble.
That's right.
They may be on the precipice of losing those billions.
Right.
You see? So we've all benefited tremendously from submitting ourselves and seeking to apply and implement this wonderful body of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And since 95 or 99% of us that are part of the membership of the Nation of Islam today were not a part of the Nation of Islam prior to 1975. There are some exceptions like Brother Student Minister James and others. But most of us, again, we have to give credit where credit is due. We didn't just walk into a library and stumble upon Message to the Black Man on a shelf and decide we were going to clean up our life. No.
That's right. That's right.
We encountered the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and his wonderful message through the divine ministry of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Minister Farrakhan's teachings, as you asked the question, are they the keys to wealth and power? Absolutely.
Come on.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
All praises.
You know something too, when you was talking about, I mean, I like the reverse analogy, you know, because I never heard somebody, once I got into Islam, my whole life went down the drain. Like you're right.
Right.
And
nobody says that.
That would be, I never heard it. And it's an article that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad did when I was doing a research also about in Muhammad Speaks newspaper in September 23rd, 1966, where he stated, he said, God did not come to make us poor, but to make us rich. And he said, read your Bible and Quran. He found me in want and now has made me free from want. If you take note, all of my followers who believe as I believe and who obey me are not in the conditions of poverty and want that they were in before they believed. So just to back up what you said.
All praises due to Allah.
Wonderful truth. All praises to Allah.
It reminds me of this slide I have from some of the archives.
Praise be to Allah.
But, you know, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he wrote an article once, you know, the core of his message economically, as you raised in one of your questions, was to do for self.
That's right.
However, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad also wrote an article called How to Get and Keep a Job.
That's right.
And so I always like this article is written in one of the one of the Negro press pub periodicals out of Baltimore, the Afro-American, back in 1963.
Yeah.
But it was writing about how employers were eager to hire the follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And it said, Mr. Muhammad's worst critics admit the brothers in the FOI, the Fruit of Islam, are the most courteous, mannerly, neat, clean, intelligent, industrious, parentheses, as well as militant workers that they have ever met. It is a known fact the Muslim brother is never out of work because even Jews and Christians would rather hire him, knowing that he won't get drunk, never be rude, would always be on time, and give them a fair amount of labor for his wages. So even if you don't have a business or some service you provide, if you're just looking to improve your standing in the woeful job market, becoming a student and follower of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad will make you shine like a bright, shiny diamond of a worker among the sea of workers who have not been blessed to submit to the message of Muhammad.
All praise is due to Allah.
Allahu Akbar. Thank you, sir.
And you know, I must make a testimony very quickly that in my employment that I have been blessed to secure, what I brought to that job was what I learned as an FOI and a member of the Nation of Islam. As a brother who grew up in the hood, the street, of course, was my how do you say that word, brother Minister Demetric? Your background that makes you what you
Pedigree.
are. Your pedigree, yes. Well, that's what mine was. But we were blessed to become refined, to express ourselves intelligently, and to manifest an administrative ability that permitted me to land jobs I would never otherwise have landed had it not been for the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. So I had to make that testimony. All praises due to Allah.
All praises due to Allah. That reminds me, Brother Student Minister James, of one of the other parts of the book I didn't get a chance to write about, but they talked about how the phenomenon of the triple package is fascinating because the successful groups, on the one hand, they have this belief in their ability, what they call a superiority complex, but they also have a knowledge that they have enemies, which creates a sense of insecurity. So they have this dual mindset where they know they are capable and they are going to be successful, but they also know that they have an enemy and that they are somewhat vulnerable or insecure. But one of the great aspects that most people recognize, similar to what I just read in that slide I shared, was the discipline that these immigrant groups have is a part of what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad instills in his followers. And so they talked about, they called it impulse control. So they said that as we'll use the term impulse control refers to the ability to resist temptation, especially the temptation to give up in the face of hardship or quit instead of persevering at a difficult task. Yeah. No society could exist without impulse control. As Freud speculated, civilization may begin with the suppression of primal sexual and aggressive instincts. Nevertheless, against the background of a relatively permissive America, some groups decidedly place greater emphasis on impulse control than others. Impulse control, too, runs powerfully against the grain of contemporary culture. The term impulse control conjures up all kinds of negative connotations, quote, control freaks, quote, people who are too control or too controlling, people who can't be impulsive and enjoy life. People who control their impulses don't live in the present, and living in the present is an imperative of modernity. Learning to live in the here and now is the lesson of countless books and feel-good movies, the key to overcoming inhibition and repression. Impulse control is for adults, not for the young, and modern culture is above all a youth culture. As we increasingly disrespect old age and try to erase its very marks from our faces, we correspondingly romanticize childhood, imagining it as a time of what ought to be unfettered happiness, as we grow ever more fearful of spoiling that happiness through excessive restraints, demands, hardship, or discipline. But by contrast, every one of America's most successful groups takes a very different view of childhood and of impulse control in general, inculcating habits of discipline from an early age, or at least they did so when they were on the rise. So basically what they are saying is that in current American society, it's rather laissez-faire. It's rather permissive. as they say in the common use of language, just do you. You ain't hurt nobody. Just do yourself. Do whatever you want to do. But they say in these immigrant cultures, they teach resisting temptation. They teach discipline. Well, I thought about that. I said that brought to mind what we've been given in the Nation of Islam.
That's right.
In terms of the restrictive law of Islam. And then what are we taught? It is our success. So now, to those of our people who love America's permissive culture, it's laissez-faire. Do whatever you want to do. Don't think about what's right. Just do what feels right. Mm-hmm. Then they feel that, oh, wow, to come into the nation, I like Minister Farrakhan's boldness. I like him speaking truth to power. I like the unity that I see in the brotherhood and the sisterhood. But it appears that I can't give up this way of life. It's too controlling. It's too restrictive. I got to be free. Well, these researchers have shown that their desire to be free and permissive and loose and what have you, that's a part of what destroys civilization. But it is, as they call it, impulse control or self-discipline, the ability to resist temptation. So we have a restrictive law. And then the minister gives to us the beautiful purpose. Says the purpose of this book is for every believer to study and apply the restrictive law of Islam in their lives so that we together may be successful in carrying out the aims of Islam in North America. So then again is this idea of success being the fruit of certain disciplines, certain characteristic traits, certain cultural practices. And we've been given that. And most of the time, even our worst critics, they say, it's one thing we know about the nation. They have discipline. They know if they bring drugs around us, we're not going to indulge in no drugs.
That's right.
People trust us with their wives and their daughters. People trust us with their wealth and their property. You see sometimes around very important celebrities, they may have Muslim brothers and sisters who are in charge of their personal security. Just think back a few years ago when our brother Michael Jackson passed away. May Allah be pleased with him. But he had brothers who were students of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan under the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as his trusted personal private security. A man that was a billionaire, but he trusted the Muslims to be around him and his family, knowing that they would not abuse him, knowing that they wouldn't steal from him, knowing that he and his property, as we are taught in Islam, we're taught in Islam that the person and the property of our brother is to be considered sacred.
That's right.
And Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that a Muslim is one of whom others are free from any harm or danger that might come from their words or their deeds.
That's right.
So again, we've been given keys, not just to religion. If we apply what we've been taught, we've been given the keys to wealth and power.
That's right. All praises due to
Allah. Beautifully put. Praise be to
Well, we are approaching the end of the broadcast. I want to turn it over to our esteemed co-hosts with any questions or last-minute comments they would like to make. I want to thank you both, Sister Sala and Brother Student Minister Chad,
praise be to Allah.
remaining past the normal time. And of course, we thank you, Brother Student Minister Demetric, and we certainly thank our beloved viewing and listening audience. And Sister Sala.
Yes, sir. I would just like to quickly share with our viewing and listening audience. I believe a brother had asked a question of Student Minister Demetric earlier with regard to some things that, of course, we can share with brothers and sisters with regard to the impact and the greatness of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. There's a beautiful article on the Final Call website, and it's actually a short article by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and the title of the article is "A True Friend, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad." And so I would recommend, I mean, there's, of course, several other articles, but that particular article, the minister is really just like a short list of, if it wasn't for the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and he begins to list just various accomplishments. So that's a good article to be able to share with brothers and sisters if they want to find out a little bit more information. They can read that particular article. Of course, like Student Minister Demetric said as well, the books of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad as well. But just want to, of course, continue to thank our Closing the Gap viewing and listening audience for tuning in for another wonderful episode on such a very special day. And that, of course, is the birth anniversary of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so did you want me to, Brother James, go ahead and go into closing announcements, or do you want to extend to Student Minister Demetric if he has any closing remarks he would like to share?
I most certainly do want to extend that to him, but I also want to give Student Minister Chad an opportunity to maybe make a closing remark, and then we'll go right to our esteemed guest to close us out.
Praise be to Allah. Wonderful show, Student Minister Demetric. Appreciate everything that you gave.
Praise be to Allah.
A beautiful article. Always look forward to your articles that you write, and you know the way that you tie things together. So it was right on time. I just want to also just send a special shout out to all the FOIs and MGTs that was in the streets, you know, and putting stuff together, just working as a unit on behalf of just the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, our Nation of Islam, on this special day that God has given us for the life of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Let's continue to work hard and justify our existence. So, praise be to Allah. That's all I want to share. Thank you again. Want to extend the greetings also from Student Regional Minister Patrick of Assalamu Alaikum to you, and also of the believers in the 7th region of Assalamu Alaikum, dear brother.
Well, alaikum salam. Please return the greetings to Brother Student Regional Minister Patrick and all of the wonderful brothers and sisters there in the 7th region. We thank Allah for each of you, and we are grateful once again to have had an opportunity and honor to be on Closing the Gap tonight, hopefully pleasing the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and hopefully pleasing the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as we have endeavored to tribute and to honor the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad on the 126th anniversary of his birth. We could, in earnest, sit here all night on over into the morning, talking about the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and what he means to us.
Right.
And we would only scratch the surface.
Come on.
Because his message that we have learned through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has just touched every aspect of Black America.
That's right.
Tonight we were talking about wealth and power and economics, but they will always be second to the spiritual wisdom that he provided for us, that gave to us and to the world for the first time in trillions of years, the true knowledge of God, the true knowledge of the reality of God and man. So we just thank Allah, and we pray that in this next year that we will be blessed to apply more of the message of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad into our lives so that we might be successful. Allah did not come that we may fail, but he came to make us successful. So thank you so much to
Thank
you, Brother Minister James, Sister Starla, and Brother Student Minister Chad. It's been a great honor and a privilege. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, Brother Minister. Until next time. And
Yes, sir.
by the grace of Allah, of course, we say inshallah, but we certainly anticipate a next time. Thank you
Yes,
for
sir.
all that you contribute to Closing the Gap Broadcast Network. For those of you who don't know, our dear brother is not only a regular guest, but he's also one of the co-founders of this network. And that was Brother Student Demetric 7 years ago. Can you believe that?
Wow.
This November, it will be 7 years.
All praises due to Allah.
So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All praises due to Allah. And so let us go to our closing announcements. My dear Sister Starla.
Yes, sir. Once again, thank you to the Closing the Gap viewing and listening audience. And of course, you want to visit finalcall.com. That's www.finalcall.com. There you see the latest edition of the Final Call. Behold, I will send you Elijah. You can visit that website and you can take out a digital subscription to the Final Call, or of course in cities around the country, when you're out and about, when you see the FOI with a physical edition of the paper, make sure you pick up a copy for yourself, as well as another copy for a family member or friend. On the very same website, if you hit the button that says store, that will take you to store.finalcall.com, where you can order the books and messages of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as well as messages by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, as well as messages from various student ministers of the Nation of Islam. And last but not least, Final Call Radio. That's Final Call Radio. On that very same website, you can hit the button and that will take you to Final Call Radio, where you can listen to excerpts from messages by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, as well as musical selections from his Let's Change the World project. So once again, that is finalcall.com. And with that, I will pass it along to Student Minister Chad Muhammad for his closing announcements.
Praise be to Allah. It was wonderful. Just, when Sister Sheila was putting up the Final Call, I seen me and Brother Kamal down there with the brothers that was out in the streets. I'm like, look, I know that guy. Okay. Praise be to Allah. We're just thankful. I always tell the people here locally, I mean, when you got a paper that's national, international, but, gives credit, and observe what's going on locally somewhere else, where that's just it's beautiful to be a part of that, because you don't get that like that, especially when it comes to good news and good things people doing. When you have national and international paper, they only want to print the gossip. They ain't trying to print the good news. They want to print the gossip over the gospel. So, we thank Final Call for that. They're printing the gospel. Praise be to Allah. For those that are listening for your very first or second time, however many times, but coming on, Closing the Gap, if you heard something and you believe what you heard to be the truth, then it's good for our people, and you want to learn more about the Nation of Islam, we want to ask you to go to www.noi.org/join, and you can fill out the digital paperwork so that someone can get back in touch with you, and then you can start that process of orientation, God willing. And for those that around in the Tampa Bay area, we want to invite you out to come visit Mosque number 47. All right. We have a wonderful speaker tomorrow, our dear brother, Student Minister James Muhammad, giving a wonderful lecture that's called Separation and Independence, Muhammad's Program and Position. So please join us at Mosque number 47 tomorrow. If you're in the area, but if you're not, please report to the nearest study group or the mosque that's near you. If you can't make it out to neither one, log on to www.noi.org to hear this wonderful lecture tomorrow.
That's right.
From our dear brother, Student Minister Daniel Muhammad, called Our Brother and Friend Elijah Muhammad, leader, teacher, and guide. Please do yourself the favor and tune in somewhere or be somewhere to get the spiritual insight that'll help us to justify our existence.
All praise be to Allah.
Praise be to Allah.
And so, as we close, I want to express words of gratitude for our executive council and the wonderful bearing of testimony that they made this evening, certainly inspiring, instructive, and encouraging. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We want to express our thanks and our love and appreciation for the God, Master Fard Muhammad, for coming 9,000 miles seeking to save that which was lost, raising from our midst his messenger, the Messiah, the exalted Christ, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, without whom we would not be here. And so we thank Allah, Master Fard Muhammad. We thank you, most honorable Elijah Muhammad, through whom we have been given our beloved and blessed Redeemer, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We thank you, thank you, thank you. And to our viewing and listening audience, again, we want to express our great gratitude for your wonderful support. We encourage that, of course, if you have any critiques of what we are attempting to do, we're always trying to improve. Let us know your ideas, your critiques, or compliments, if you will. You can go to closingthegapbroadcast@gmail.com and let us know what you think about our broadcast. All praises due to Allah. Thank you for your financial support. And we ask you to continue to support Closing the Gap Broadcast Network. You can do so by donating Cash App to $CTG Broadcast, PayPal at JKingdom1 at AOL.com. And lastly, Zelle, Closing the Gap Broadcast @gmail.com. Thank you. Thank you ever so much. All praises due to Allah. So tune in next week. If I haven't left out anything, as a matter of fact, Sister Sheila, do we have access to the solicitation for members of the broadcast network? Those who might be interested in becoming a part and being members, we need producers. There you go. We are expanding. We need production techs. We need people in marketing, graphic design, new content creators, revenue generation, such as merchandising and other ideas. We have not been pursuing the dollar for those of you who have followed us for these last 7 years, as you well know. But we do believe that seek ye first the kingdom of God and all of its righteousness, and all other things will be added unto you. So all praises due to Allah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Tune in next week where we will continue our celebratory programs and broadcasts. We have much to celebrate, particularly the 28th anniversary of the Million Man March and Day of Atonement. Next week, we will be celebrating that, so don't you miss it. We also have our affiliate broadcasts. We want you to tune into, Sister Sheila, if we can have that. There it is. Yes, tune in to Closing the Gap Network broadcast. We have our dear brother and student minister, Willie Muhammad, with I Have a Testimony, very well known and popular broadcast. We have our dear sister and doctor, Sister Dr. Patrice Muhammad, every first and third Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the Great Rockwell Radio Show, hosted by Brother Vaughn and Big Dave C. every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the Farrakhan Generation, which we may be under another name. I think it's the Youth Committee, but we'll see, inshallah, with our wonderful hosts, Sister Mariam Warith Muhammad, Brother Michael J. Hassan Muhammad, and of course, our director of that broadcast, Brother Ramel X. We have Nuestra Nacion de Islam, hosted by student minister Abel Muhammad. Hopefully he will be rebroadcasting whenever they reorganize. As I understand, he's taken on a teaching job at the time he previously broadcast, but we anticipate his speedy return to the broadcast. We have our dear sister Healing with Angelica, hosted by Angelica every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And our dear sister Charlene Muhammad, the national staff writer. Am I saying it right, Sister Stala?
Correspondent, national correspondent.
National correspondent. Sorry about that, Sister Charlene. The national correspondent of the Final Call newspaper with Liberated Sisters every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And last but not least, yours truly, our show, Closing the Gap broadcast, airing every Saturday, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, with our wonderful, esteemed hosts, Brother Student Minister Chad Muhammad, and the star of our show, which I haven't said that in a long time, but I'll say it again, Sister Starla Muhammad. Thank you all for your great help, your tuning in. Let's go to work. There's much, much, much more we have on the drawing board, brothers and sisters. We anticipate that by the end of this month, we will have 2 additional broadcasts with the goal of 20 by the end of this year. And you all, inshallah, will help us accomplish that. Thank you. Thank you. And may Allah continue to bless you as we greet you in peace. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.